Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Thank you for following along and joining us this evening for the show. Always, all the gratitude in the world for you guys taking the time out of your evenings to let me come into your living rooms through your phones, tablets, laptops, computers, whatever it is you're watching on, and sharing a wonderful conversation that hopefully adds a little bit of value to your life. So, thank you again, guys, for letting me interrupt your evening, as I like to say. But let's go ahead and start, of course, like we always do, get all the particulars out of the way. It's getting a lot easier to do. So, guys, if you're watching us for the first time, we are streaming live on YouTube, and you can check us out on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/the letter C/ made from scratch broadcast on YouTube. Do us a favor, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. We always glad to build our viewership there. And of course, hit the notification bell. It will let you know whenever we do schedule new content, whenever we do schedule or whenever we drop new videos on the channel, or whenever we are live. So you'll get a notification that you know that I am live on Facebook. on YouTube. So thank you so much if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, now on every other platform, we have simplified the process. Guys, you can find us at MFSB Live on Facebook, on Twitter via Periscope, and then we are streaming live on Twitch. So you can check us out on Twitch as well. And of course, we do our separate thing on Instagram. So if you're watching on Instagram, that is the one-way conversation of me talking to you on Instagram that nobody else gets to see. So if you're watching there, guys, thank you so much. Drop it down in the comments. Let me know that you're watching. And if you're watching on our Facebook page, do us a favor, hit the like button there as well. Same sort of deal like on YouTube. It will let you know whenever we do schedule new lives, whenever we are live on there as well, and you'll get notifications so you don't miss another episode. So now that we got all that out of the way, guys, let's go ahead and get started on this evening's guest. So he is the CEO of Quota Consulting Group. He also sees himself as a sales success architect. Anything from training to scripting to sales tech, he helps small businesses create scalable inside sales teams. His newest program is called Authentic Persuasion, and the goal of it is helping salespeople go from a order taker to a quota breaker. So, guys, do me a favor, help me welcome to the show this evening's guest, Mr. Jason Cutter. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Just enjoying this indoor summer like most other people.
Yeah, so we were just having a brief conversation, of course, about the weather, guys. So if you do not know, I do stream live from the state of Texas, and it does get a little bit hot here. And next week we are scheduled to be in the 100s, so I'm enjoying the 90s as much as I can, because if we get up in there, it's going to be a little bit hot. And on top of that, we were just talking about the mosquitoes are starting to come out, and that's going to be fun. I wonder if that has anything to do with maybe carrying COVID. I never thought about that, but
probably not. I think we're good from that one plague, but I think there's lots of others going on for sure.
Exactly. So, and of course, you were telling us a little bit about your time that you'd spent, and that's one of the things we're going to get into is Jason's past a little bit, because he does have a zigzag sort of trail how he got to this point. But
it's a nice way to put it.
But yeah. So one of the things that he did talk about, of course, was he did spend time in Afghanistan, right? And you said he spent. You've been there when it was up in 130 degrees.
I was actually in Kuwait, trying to get home, and it was 130 with a 40-mile-an-hour sandstorm for 3 days. And the way I describe it to people, if you're curious, open the oven, put your face over it, and that blast of heat. Now have somebody throw hot sand at your face for 3 days, and that's literally what it felt like to go outside.
Wow.
Yeah, that was after that. Most other hot is really not that hot.
Exactly right. Now you got a point of reference to go, okay, it's this is bearable.
Yes. It could be worse, right? Like there's always a way it could be hotter, and just be glad it's not. So
yeah. So, and of course, one of my former guests, of course, awesome. She's in Canada. Lucky you. Being up there, where I'm pretty sure it's pretty nice up there this time of the year. So that is brutal. Yes, it is brutal to talk about. So thank you, Amanda, of course, and then of course Kenneth Dunner Jr. He's always following the show. He's got his own way of expressing love and compassion for everybody else. So that's one of the things let's get into talking about before we go into your path a little bit. Let's talk about your program, Authentic Persuasion, and how you came up with the concept of building that up, because it's one of the interesting things that I was reading about on the website about empathy and the things that you offer. So kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. And it's interesting because I spent a long time in sales and sales leadership, even coaching, even consulting, without a term for what I had. In fact, it's funny, and this is, kind of the discussion and what I like to share, is that I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, even when I was starting my consulting business, because everyone cool out there you listen to has their 5-step program and their cool acronym and their system, right? And I'm like, yes. I don't have the 8 steps to close a sale. Like, I don't have this like framework. I just know what I do. And even I was writing my book, which will be coming out soon, but literally writing the book without a title, without a framework. I just knew the process that I had done to be successful in sales, and then what I've taught hundreds of salespeople to do as well, which was Authentic Persuasion. And then it finally hit me when I was listening to somebody else's podcast. I sat down, I'm like, what is it that I do? And it's like, boom, those 2 words just came to mind like instantly. I remember it was March 26th. I was sitting on the floor, and then like within 5 minutes, I was buying domain names, and I was like, I was like titling my book, all while still sitting on the floor at like 6:30 in the morning. And, it really put the pieces together, because that's what I teach people. And that's what I think the world really needs more of, which is the authentic persuasion piece. So people to be who they are, which is a journey, because it's tough, because we all have our fears, we have our worries, our doubts, our limitations. And then there's like, why do you want to do it? What are your strengths? What should you be doing? Where is a square peg, a square fit into a square hole? And it's just like lights out, on fire. Here's what you were meant to be doing in this moment in your life. And then the persuasion piece, which is really like a professional, like a doctor or somebody like that, moving somebody forward toward a purchasing decision that makes sense for them, that's the right thing for them, not just for yourself.
Yeah. So that's like you said, everybody has their plans laid out, and it's kind of intimidating to see that. Go, wow, they got their 5 tips and their tools, and what's gonna carry me to the quote unquote next level, right?
Yeah.
And then you sit down and say, well, heck, how do I construct my own to do?
Exactly. It's tough. And I spent a lot of time, dissecting what I had done and what I knew worked well and what was effective. And not just for superstars, right? Not just salespeople who are naturally born salespeople, which I don't think actually exists, but, somebody who's just got it figured out versus somebody who wants to be good at sales, but they also don't want to be that slick line tactic, trick using type of person. And, they're missing some element to help them be successful.
So could you say that somebody could actually want to, quote unquote, when the book comes out, pull a little bit of life lessons from what they're reading? Is it more, geared towards technically closing the sale? So kind of explain that a little bit for me.
So the first third of the book is the authentic piece. So the book is broken down into 3 pieces, which is like fits what I firmly believe. So there's the authentic piece, there's the persuasion piece, and then there's what I call the intangibles. So the first third of the book is all internal self-awareness, perspective, journey, understanding who you are, what makes you tick, what are you afraid of, what is your primal part of your brain that still thinks it's thousands of years ago on the savannah being attacked by a tiger at any moment. How is that holding you back, and where is that showing up in your life? And that's the challenge. So the first third of the book is really that mindset and self-awareness and understanding, should you be in sales, and how can you be successful in your own head and at your own game. And then we can get into the strategies and a system that works well. A lot of people are going to want to skip to the system or skip to the last third of the book and just get some of the intangible tips. And it's like, that's great, but it won't last very long if you don't have the foundation built for your house.
Exactly right. And kind of like what Amanda says, your sales are such a fine line between
100%.
Sleazy, honest, natural, and helpful. So, when you're talking about that, like you said, you're skipping a lot of the meat. I mean, just to get to the dessert. And I think that's pretty important whenever you're putting something like this together, because I think when you're even going out into talking about sales and connecting and doing this sort of thing, it's about doing that. It's about learning the human side of somebody, and then learning about yourself as well. That's kind of a two-way street. So,
and to Amanda's point, what I appreciate about that is a fine line. And that's where, like, the subtitle, the book is called Selling with Authentic Persuasion. The subtitle is transformed from order taker to quota breaker. And sometimes people get kind of offended, or they have like a little reaction to that if I'm calling them an order taker. But what happens, and I see this a lot, is people are in sales roles. They are supposed to be selling. They're afraid of that fine line and crossing that line, like Amanda brought up. And they're worried about being that guy, right? Or that woman, and doing the wrong thing and doing it for their own reasons with the wrong intentions. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back, because they're literally worried about crossing that line. And for me, I see it a lot differently, which is when you have a valuable product or service, it doesn't matter. It could be knives. It could be, surgery. Like it literally could be anything in there. It still applies. If you have something of value and somebody needs it and it's a good fit, it's actually your duty and responsibility to help them buy. You're actually failing them if you let them walk away without buying something that would have helped them.
Exactly right. And even like Libby's saying, she loves the 3-part approach, emphasis on authenticity first, because I think that's, again, what people really like about somebody. And I equate this to like a car salesman. I've had, like, in my family, my father used to always go to the same guy. There's tons of different dealerships selling a lot of the same vehicles, but he built a relationship with the guy, and they go back and they go, well, he knows me. That's authentic. That's trust. That's whatever it is. And then we'll go back to the guy for years, until the guy would either retire or pass away. But, that kind of tells you about what it's like to have that, and to be that authentic person making sales and going, okay, well, they remember that. I mean, at some point, say, hey, I need this again. Let me call so-and-so. And that's a good thing about being authentic in your own self, man. So that's good that you put that. So let's start about now going about how you built this up from your past, walking the lines of the zigzag. So let's start there, because it's good to get to this point, but I also like to learn about what was the path that led you here. So kind of walk us through a little bit about your career.
I love the fact that you started with the end, because sometimes people, when I talk to them, they want to know about the beginning and the whole journey. And I think it's more fun and interesting. I think it's also some shock value when I talk about the fact that I'm a consultant. I help teams with their sales. I have the book. I have other stuff I know we'll talk about. And literally, I found this way to help people sell in a proper way. And then I tell them, like, part of my journey started when I went to college, and I have my bachelor's degree in marine biology, and I tagged sharks for years. And even before then, even going further back, I mean, I was a shy, awkward, only child who was a late bloomer, who was semi-bullied as a kid because I was just so odd. I was too smart for one group and not smart enough for another group. And it was like, I just didn't fit in. And it's just life. And, it's not one of those things I would ever change, because it made me who I am, and it helped me build, especially, a lot of empathy. But, and my parents, who are very supportive and so loving and caring. I mean, my mom was, before she retired, a banker and in finance. My dad was an engineer before he retired and moved his way up to program manager and director. But two analytical parents, at least my mom, because she saw a lot of fraud in sales, is very anti-sales. Like, she did not like that car salesperson who was trying to get one over on her. She loves good service. She loves relational people. If she finds somebody that's a good one, like the one you're talking about, where you just keep going back, she loves that. She hates the manipulators, and she just sees it like as a battle. And so I was raised in kind of an anti-sales household, which a lot of people in my position as a consultant, sales, author, it's like, oh, you were born this way. Maybe your parents sold, vacuums door to door, and you grew up. No, like, that was definitely not my upbringing, such that I didn't even want to deal with people. That's why I went to school and got my bachelor's degree in marine biology. Like, I just didn't want to deal with people. I fought, working with the public for a long time, but, made those transitions. And, ended up after getting my degree in marine biology and not being able to get a job in that without a master's degree. I was in Seattle. I worked at Microsoft doing tech support for a couple of years back when that was actually a thing. If anyone can remember, it used to be done by people in the United States before it got outsourced. And we actually lost our jobs in 2002 to the first wave of people in China and India and Philippines taking over those jobs from us, which was fine because I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, but that's interesting though, right? I mean, that's not how the path starts out. That's not the plan. Right? You go, I mean, because when people ask you about, well, like you said, somebody might say, hey, tell me a little bit about your past. Or like, oh, yeah, well, I had a past in finance or these other things that kind of correlate with what you're doing now. When you tell somebody, well, I used to be in marine biology. Whoa, that's like a total, that's like a total, quote unquote, jumping the shark, going from
100%. Well, and that's like, I got the marine biology, I got the years at Microsoft doing tech support. I've worked in restaurants. At one point, even when I was in community college, I used to clean fish tanks for a living, like at Chinese restaurants and lawyers' offices. Like I did that for a while where I literally drove around cleaning fish tanks. And, then I spent time working as a contractor for the military. I wasn't in the military. I was a civilian. So when I talk about the authentic piece, it's really about bringing all of that. Like it's about being complete. Like my path was a hot mess for a long time with no direction. And I used to beat myself up over it in my head all the time because I didn't do the formula, right? Go to school, get a degree, get a career, do that for a long time, start a family, have kids, buy a house, go on vacations. Like my life has been pretty much the opposite of that, which I now see as powerful. During it, it was something I stressed about.
Yeah, it was something like, well, you probably spent a lot of time saying, what's my purpose? Going from one end to the other, going, okay, this isn't it. All right, what's next? What's the next journey? What's the next thing? Because again, I think a lot of people, it takes them taking that zigzag to figure out, to figure out once everything it is, because all those experiences help build up. They pretty much help you build a foundation of what you are now.
Yeah. And it's a journey, right? So part of it is figuring out who you are, what you're good at, what you like to do. And like I tell people, where does time lose all meaning? Like, where do you forget to eat, to drink, to maybe even go to the bathroom? Like you literally don't care because you're in the zone. Even at work, like not just talking about hobbies and you're working on your car or you're reading, but I mean, just like in a working setting where you're providing value to somebody else, right? Through your product or service, whatever your role is, even if it's designing websites, like what is it that loses all meaning? Like where time just goes away, do more of that. And then like my mom always says, I mean, and she's told me for years, also the point of life is trying things and figuring out what you don't like to do, right? Yeah. What do you never want to do again, and start narrowing it down to what it is that you are really meant for.
Yeah. And that's one of the good things about once you've gone through all these trials, yeah, I know I don't want to go back to that. That's one thing that I have a definite answer on it.
Yeah.
I made it past it for a reason, so I can keep going forward. So let's talk a little bit about the process of writing your own book. I find this interesting as well because I'm kind of like you in this whole process. So what made you think to sit down and go, let's see, I'll write a book? So how did that process start for you? I mean, what was the first thing that you laid out and said, I got an idea, I need to start writing it down?
So in full honesty, I started writing a book in 2009 as well. Initially, mm-hmm. I was helping people who were in foreclosure at the time. And I just saw this thing. The title of that book was going to be called Addicted to the American Dream of Home Ownership, because I just saw it. I think it was Amanda or somebody mentioned earlier about, like a 12-step program. I started studying those, and I did what a lot of people do, where they start writing and then they start doubting and they start thinking like, who am I to write a book? Why would anyone want to listen to me? Like all those voices got in my head, and then I just quit. Right. And I didn't have a lot of support around me saying, yes, you can do it, and this would be great. And so I stopped. And then about 2 years ago, I got it in my head where it was just like burning inside. It's like, I got to write a book, not for any specific purpose, but I want to write a book, and I just want to get this out of my head. Like it literally burning inside. And then what I did was I started writing, and I thought, okay, I'll write an autobiography. And I started writing. And then I thought, you know what? I need some help. So I actually hired a coach, a book writing and publishing coach, not a ghostwriter, but I want to do self-published. And I knew somebody, his name is Patrick Snow. I had met him years and years ago. We'd stayed in touch. So I contacted him, and he's like, I can help you. I've got the system to use. Like, here's the structure. And I'm really good. You give me the outline and the structure, and I will fill in all the gaps like a machine. And so then I started that process. And writing it the first round was really easy. I knocked out 60,000 words, a couple of hours a day in 6 weeks while working full time. It was just done. And then I read it, and I didn't like it. And then I threw it aside and almost didn't do anything with it.
Right. And that's a lot of words to go, you know what? Let me just toss it to the side. But again, I understand, because as a writer, you do have your own standards that you have to meet, and you have to be satisfied with at the end of the day. Because again, I've written things where I just go, oh, this is shit. I can't, I got to put it aside. And who knows, you might be able to use it for something else, but for what I'm specifically working on, this is not going to work. So you sit there and you take this, you know.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, like, there's a balance though, because sometimes it's not quality, it's shit. I don't want to publish it. It doesn't represent me and what I stand for.
Yes.
And then sometimes it's the devil in your head saying it's shit, don't do it, nobody's going to like it, it's garbage, but it's actually good, or it's good enough to like move forward with. And so that's a tough one. That's a tough one to figure out.
Yeah. And you know, and again, I know a lot of authors, and a lot of them have told me this, look, you got to see it this way. If you hit a home run on your first one, good, you're going to be the exception.
Yeah.
But for most, just go ahead and take it under the wing that your first one is. Just do it. It's gonna, even if you think it's gonna be crap, it probably will be. But that's okay, because it's your first time doing anything. It's like anything. It's like again, it's like riding a bike. You don't get on your bike the first time and go, I'm off. Right. It's usually ride it a few steps, fall down, get back up, try it again until you get it down. And again, that's the way that most authors work, is because again, they know. But you know, at the first book for a lot of them is for them. It's not so much. It's not so much for, oh, this is just for the crowd. This is for the audience. Most of them are. It's an accomplishment I want to get done, to put out. Yeah. It's a story or whatever you've created in your head, and you go, I have to get out into the world. And once it's there, then the next one, you're like, okay, cool. I feel comfortable now. And I know the process, and it gets a little bit easier. You trust yourself a little bit more. Because again, I'm like you, I've done work where I go, can this work? Right. And you go back and you're your own worst critic inside your head. You're always your worst critic, and you're going, this does not sound right, or whatever it is. And then you let somebody read it and they go, this is magnificent. And you're like,
right.
What? Okay, cool.
I know. That's exactly what happened. I mean, I set it aside, and then I'm like, okay, I don't like it. And I was correct. Like the first version of the book, you know, that I had edited, but then I just didn't like it. It wasn't good. It didn't tell a good story, even though it's a sales book and it's kind of a training book. It didn't tell a good story. It was boring. It was really boring to read. And I wrote it, and I'm just like, wow, this is boring. And so then I rewrote it almost from scratch. I think I maybe copied about a third of what I wrote, and then I just wrote it again from scratch in another 6 weeks. And then that's the one I'm working on. Then I, would print it and then edit it and then think about it. And that was all without a title. And it wasn't until March when I came up with that title, like we talked about earlier, when it hit me. And I was just like, it was sitting on my desk for 3 months. And I'm like, what do I even do with this thing? Like, is it even good? The title hit me. And then within a week, I had it edited, ready to go with a title, restructured, reorganized chapters. And I'm like, that's it. Now I'm behind it 100%.
That is super. Yeah, that's super. That's super fascinating, because again, usually for most authors, I already have the title in place, right? To go, well, first let me write a whole book, and then I don't have a title for it. It hasn't come to me to have something like that almost complete, and then go, oh, now I got the title, right? Yeah. So it goes along with it.
I've always been a little special. I'll tell you that.
So Here's a cool question, right? So
Yeah.
Libby asks, is selling yourself different than selling a product or service?
So for me, and Libby is amazing. I'm so glad that she's on here. And that's a great question in general. I think that it's the same. I mean, when you're doing sales, right? We'll use the air quotes. When you're doing sales, the in a proper way that's in alignment with you, and you're using some kind of framework, whether it's authentic persuasion or whatever works best for you. To me, it's whether you're selling yourself an idea, right? Let's say you're raising money, or you're selling a product, or you're selling a service, then it's the same, right? It's that same formula of parts that you want to put together. And obviously, if you're selling yourself, then the authenticity piece is important, because the kind of clients that you're going to want, if they're buying you or hiring you, right, coach, consultant, the kind that you want are going to want and appreciate the authentic you and the persuasive you and what you're bringing to the table, instead of like anything that's different than that, because it's not going to work long term. If they're buying you, at some point you're gonna slip up, and you're not going to be able to pretend to be that person that you tried to be in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's
just like a relationship, right? Like you want to date somebody, and on the first date you act a certain way and you think that's what they want. At some point, if that relationship goes long term, they're going to find out that wasn't the real you, and it may or may not blow up in your face.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about, hey, when you tell somebody, be your real authentic self. And if you don't know that person yet, go learn it. That's one of the things about, like you've gone through, is that was part of the journeys to figure out who Jason Cutter was, is to figure out because again, you're not the same person you were when you started.
No.
And it's so interesting that all these experiences, all these things, those are all the foundations to help you find what I'm meant to be, who I'm supposed to be, and what I am as a person. Even now, we continue to do this. I'm on the same sort of journey, right? I've been zigzagged all over my career. I found this forum and this way to communicate and connect with people, and it's been a real growth and developmental journey for me, because I'm learning a lot more about myself. I'm learning a lot of things about myself. So I'm learning about what it is to be kind and compassionate and show empathy, and learning about the things that don't work for me, right? Learning what my weaknesses are, because again, I think that's something we all should learn about ourselves, and look at ways to turn them into your strengths. I wrote a whole thing about it today. I wrote a whole post about my weaknesses, what it is that I feel that I need to work on, because a lot of people that I know and trust give me advice, because that's one of the things I do, is I am a constant evaluator. And one of the big things I do is evaluate myself. So when somebody tells me something and I go, hey, let me know what the truth is, no BS.
Right.
And, they tell you that, and then you got to take time to process it and go, okay, cool. Right. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing in sales. I mean, when you ask somebody, hey, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? What are the things what are the things that you probably need to work on? So, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who says, I'm trying to evaluate what my weaknesses, or I know what my weaknesses are. How do I go through and learn different ways to make them my strengths? So I guess, for example, they're weak at the point of contact at the very beginning.
Right.
And how would you walk somebody through that and go, okay, these are some of the things you could possibly do to build yourself a little bit stronger in that area?
Well, and if it's, a tactical weakness, right? So it's a point of contact or asking for the sale versus a personality and behavior weakness. Those are two different things. Yes. I mean, if it's a technical one like that, like what do you do at the point of contact? I mean, the number one thing is to be yourself. The number two thing is to understand the value that you represent with your product or service. what does it mean to the other person and how will it impact their life? And again, when I say impact their life, transform their life, that sounds like, oh man, it's only if you're selling like some huge life-changing thing, right? Like Tony Robbins. No, again, it could be selling knives or vacuum cleaners, but how are those knives going to impact somebody and improve them, right? And if you can find the value in that, you can find the value in anything. So if I sell you these knives are amazing. What would that do for your life and for cooking in the kitchen? Like all of that stuff. So that second step is you got to understand the value of what you represent to the right customers when you talk to them. And then the third thing is always remember they're another person. It's like a lot of times people say business to business, business to consumer, like I'm calling on prospect, like no matter what, at the end of the day, it's actually human to human, right? H to H. It's two humans. And that's what I tell people all the time is relax. It's just you and another human having a conversation that may end up in a sale, but they're just another person. And remember, they're another person with their own fears, with their own issues, with their own stresses and worries. And most likely they're going through something right now, because most people are, not just in this current, climate, but I just mean in life. Yeah. Everybody is going through something in their life that is stressing them out, and or they really don't want anyone to know about it. And you always got to keep that in mind. And that's where empathy comes in. Just remember, it's another person, right? Like they say, and the joke is, everyone puts their pants on, one leg at a time. That person got dressed this morning, whether they're at the office and they're a CEO or they're just, a homeowner, like it's just another person. Just have a conversation. And if you have something of value, great. If they're not interested and you did your best, great.
Yeah. But at least that was good advice. I love that fact about it. So let me go and say, do you, and I'm probably going to ask you to dig into your mind a little bit. Do you remember like your first big sale where you said, okay, this is a rush? Do you remember making that first sale? Do you remember what it was?
For me, it was actually not even in my first sales career. So my first sales career, when I got into sales, I was in the mortgage business. So residential mortgages, it's 2002. It was, the housing boom was just starting to take off. I was in Washington State. Things were appreciating 18% by the minute. And so everyone wanted to buy, and it didn't take any sales skills to be a loan officer. It took more processing skills and admin skills than it took actually convincing people, because everyone just wanted it. So I don't think I really, there wasn't those moments where I was like, yeah, I had good months. I remember having my first good month and driving around going, I can't believe I made that in 1 month. Like that number just the number just kept popping in my head. And I'm not generally motivated by money. Like that's not my one factor. That's not the one thing, but it was still really cool. I was like, holy crap, that just happened. Like that was amazing. But I would say like the real rush of a sale came when I shifted away from that. And then I was working with a friend of mine as a business partner, and we were helping people who were in foreclosure. And I can remember the first time talking to a homeowner who then agreed to have us basically help them save them from losing their house at auction and to the sheriff. And I can remember that feeling of like getting like actually something impactful and somebody who's like, okay, yes, I agree. And I can remember that first sale kind of on my own instead of at a company. And yeah, that was definitely different. And then of course, like a lot of sales, especially if you're in business for yourself, right? Yeah. Is the sale is the first step. And then there's a whole bunch of work left after that, right? Like right now as a consultant, somebody hires me, that's great. But now the work begins, right? That's just phase one.
Yeah. And that's because again, I always ask that because usually those moments, they are something that you ingrain in your mind. And when they're usually either motivating factors one way or another, right? So there's a motivating factor. Hey, I didn't like it, or hey, I love this. I want to continue to do it and push forward. So, because again, I always find interesting when I ask people about their stories about what was that one moment. So when you talk to somebody, hey, what was it for you that says this is what I need to do for the rest of my life? That's always an interesting question to ask somebody, because again, it takes some people have it right at the top of the mind because it's what drives them.
Yeah.
And so for some people, it takes a while to look back and go, oh gosh, what would it be? Because they're on this path or they're on this journey, but it's been so long for them. And but that's just interesting to me to find out, because each of us is different. Each of us is unique. So learning about somebody, that's one of the things that I love to dig into people's minds there, because I learn from this as well. That's why I ask, because just like you said, we're both human, and I'm learning about you just as not as what the audience is learning about what you do, because again, it's interesting to find out. And let me ask you about I wanted to go into back to your past a little about the marine biology thing, because it's always I'm always interested in that. What was the one thing that kind of made you think this would be a good career field for me? Was it something were you always interested in it, or was it just a decision? That's because it's always interesting to me think about, he went from marine biology to where he is now.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think some of the reason why I went from marine biology to where I am now, honestly, is that I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I mean, I didn't go to school to get a degree to say, I want to do this, right? Like, I want to be this person, or I want to be a scientist, or I want to work with this, or I want to work at SeaWorld, right? Like, I didn't actually have that as a vision. I just knew I was interested in marine biology. I was going to be the first one in the family, like all of the families, including extended family, to go to college. And it was just like something that was important for me to do, something that, was kind of not required, but expected of me to do and then create better than my parents and my family, and kind of make life easier for myself theoretically. But like not having a clear direction with that, which is, I think, kind of what happened afterwards. But it was in early high school. I was in a in a biology class. The teacher, there was a segment of the year that was spent on marine biology. And then I just instantly started getting interested. Shark Week was just coming out. Like, the first Shark Weeks were happening on TV. Again, dating myself, about the time pre-Shark Week. And now it's just all the time. But literally I would, get a VHS tape and record Shark Week on the recorder so I could watch it all year. And then my teacher was super supportive. My parents were supportive. I got to meet some shark experts at the time, go to the aquarium a lot. And I just really I was like, this is fascinating. And I took my kind of curiosity and fascinated part and focused that on marine biology and sharks and all of that for years. And then, went to school for it.
Yeah. So what's the closest you've ever been to being bitten by a shark since?
I mean, so here's the tough thing to say, like, closest to being bitten by something serious.
Yes.
Like, not very close to being bitten. I've been close. So the biggest sharks that I've tagged is great white sharks. 18-foot great whites. There was one day where we had 3 18-foot great whites circling our 21-foot boat. So just let that sink in. And I'm the young guy on the crew, so I'm like 20. I think I was probably 20 years old at the time. My job was to use the long stick to poke the 18-foot great white sharks away from the bait that's hanging off the boat, while the other guys filmed them and then tagged them, right? Like I'm the guy trying to push the 7,000-pound shark away from the, the dead bait. Yeah, with a stick. And that was my only job. So I was really close. I mean, the shark is in the water coming up for the bait, like you see in the movies, and I'm the kid pulling the bait. And so pretty close, not close to being bit. And these are stories that my mom never wanted to hear before they happened. She was okay hearing about it afterwards once she knew I was safe, but definitely never before, which I just learned not to tell her what I was going to do. I only told her what I had done, especially with sharks. So, but I also spent a ton of time in the water, in shallow water in the estuaries, especially for my own thesis. So we would just catch hundreds of sharks walking around with a net. They're bumping into your leg, they're splashing around, they're flopping, you're grabbing them by hand. So never got bit, but was really close to all of the dangerous parts for a lot of sharks.
That's pretty wild, though. I mean, to think about it, because that's an experience for most folks, because of course the stigma everybody sees is Jaws, and they think about the great white sharks, because again, those aren't small for people who don't know. those are, and he said, remember, he said 18 foot. So.
Yeah. And like I said, I was lucky the year before I started working with that organization, the Pelagic Shark Research Foundation, is that they had a 16-foot boat before I started, and they upgraded to a 21-foot boat with 18-foot sharks. So,
so that's the size of the boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That is, that's an interesting.
And people always joke, right? They say, well, now I deal with salespeople and it's a different kind of shark. I mean, it's actually more dangerous. I think people are definitely harder to deal with than sharks. I mean, sharks have one direction, one mode, one purpose. And once you understand that, you can play with that and you can handle and mitigate that pretty well, right? You just know which is the business end of the shark and which end is the safer end. People are totally different, right? Like it's a way harder animal to deal with.
Exactly. And that's, that's the complexity of who we are as human beings, right? We can be there's a reason we're the predominant species.
Yeah. The apex for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
All right. Let me ask you a few more questions before we get out of here, because I usually start the closing process a little bit of the interview. So, what is one of the things that you've had to adjust to with everything going on with COVID-19 and what you do, because you're a consultant, and I guess sometimes it is interesting that somebody might hire you. They might want you on site or close up to see and evaluate and do a lot of these things. How's everything that's changed, and now it's eventually going back to where we're going to revert back to where we started at the beginning of the year eventually, because people are people. How has that affected your business and how you conduct, and what are some of the things you've done to adapt to that?
So it's really tough. And, sometimes I know there's other ways to do it, but for me, the part where time loses all meaning and where I love it the most and where I enjoy things and where I feel like my purpose is really meant to be in one category of my life is to be in an office, working with a sales team, doing training, but then standing with them, listening to their calls or watching their meetings, and then giving them feedback, helping them with that light bulb moment where you say, hey, try this on the next one. They do it. It works. It's amazing. And then like that energy is just great. Like literally I can go all day without eating. Doesn't matter. Like it's exciting. And so that's tough right now because you can't do that. That's not a thing. People aren't in their offices. The clients that I have, they're not in their offices. So you've got to do that remote. So whether that's listening to calls or lots of Zoom meetings. So for me, I haven't not traveled for this long in a very long time. I'm never home this much. And so that's been weird. I mean, I'm good with working from home, but I'm used to traveling and being in offices and making an impact on a bigger scale. So it's been more one-on-one. It's been more coaching individual sales reps and helping them with their game as much as it is also teams. So that's one thing I've evolved to during this period is taking on more individual coaching clients, people who are in sales. They want help. They want to get to the next level. They're struggling. They're not sure why. And, then I can help them get there with training, sometimes just accountability. Sometimes, they're on an island and they just need help that their company's not giving them or their manager's not giving them. And so, some of it's that. That's been the big shift is that remoteness. But then also, there's been some companies who just say, hey, you know what? We don't care. We want the help. Even if everyone's remote, do the best you can with it. And let's use this time to rebuild the foundation of the house so we can build a new house when things come back to normal and we can hit the ground running, when it's time. Yeah.
Do you think that will eventually what a lot of these businesses will go back to? Or do you think a lot of them will say, you know what, this remote thing has kind of worked out better for us? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking because I'm not in the field, but that it's an interesting question to ask.
So I think the remote works, especially in sales, if you have a very strong corporate culture of people who are very clear on what the company does, what they're there for, the mission, the vision, the core values. Everyone is indoctrinated into that. Everyone understands it. Everyone's rowing the boat in the same direction. Everyone cares about the customers and they're, on that same path together. as a group. You can split them up and it works well. And they have a leader. They don't have a micromanaging manager, right? Who needs to stand over shoulders and make sure you're making your phone calls. Like that doesn't work when you go remote. It only works if you have a strong culture and you have a workforce, a team who is intrinsically motivated. So not the carrot, not the stick, not the, hey, I'll give you a TV if you hit your numbers this month, and not, hey, I'll fire you if you don't hit your numbers this month, but individuals who like, they know what they want, why they want it. They know why they get up every day and why they want to be successful in sales or in their business or in their job, whatever that might be. The more that you have that, the easier it is for everyone to be remote because they don't need micromanaging. They're playing their game the way that they want to play it, and it works really well. The challenge is most companies don't have a good culture. They don't have good systems in place. They don't have a good process. And from what I've seen, and this, kind of stings a little bit, and they, companies don't want to hear this, but they didn't need help from someone like me for a long time because the economy was good, setting records every day pre-COVID. Everything was fantastic, making money despite bad sales reps, despite broken processes, despite X, Y, and Z, it was still working, right? Talk to companies, they say, well, I know my sales teams aren't good. I know my reps need a lot of help, but we're making money. So I don't really care. I don't want to disturb anything, right? I don't want to fix what's not broken, even though it's broken. And then you see a lot of companies who are like, oh crap, my team isn't very good, or my sales reps are missing something, or my leaders need help. And so that's what we've seen a lot of is people go, yeah, what we didn't work anymore. What works in a good economy doesn't usually work in a bad economy.
Interesting. That's, because again, that's a different aspect to what it is, because again, it's like you said, let's not rock the boat if we don't have to, right? If things are rolling. But could you imagine if they did, how much they would streamline, how much more you could probably create in sales? I mean, literally volume driving just by changing the culture. And, I admire that a lot, that you go out there and you take that to task to a lot of companies, because again, a lot of business owners, like you said, don't want to hear it, because again, it kind of looks at, they kind of look at the structure and go, well, where does the structure start at? It starts at the top. So
always.
So if everything else looks bad, what is that going to be of them? It's going to be
it starts at the top, and then the negative version of that is the fish stinks from the head down, right? I think is what they say. Like, then that's an issue. And the companies I saw that were doing things beforehand, the companies I worked with even beforehand, all this stuff, like during this COVID kind of crisis that's affecting a lot of companies negatively, they're literally having their best months ever because they built the processes and they actually help their customers with something of value that people want versus selling them crap they don't want. And so for them, they're still serving the right people at the right time, and they're doing well.
Awesome. That's awesome. So let me get into how I usually wrap up a lot of my shows. And I've asked this to, before I say that, I lie. I have not asked one guest because we got super excited and I even skipped the question. and this is episode 97. So out of 96 episodes, I've asked this question for every guest. So I'm going to ask you, okay, when the book is said and done on Mr. Jason Cutter, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? And what is the one thing you want to be remembered for?
For me at this point in my life, and I see it kind of as an evolving thing, I don't want to take that as the weak way out of like giving a definite answer. But one thing I've learned in my life, like my perspective changes, my purpose changes, like, lifetime purpose, I'll only know in retrospect. But for me, the legacy is really at this moment, just helping people transform and lean more into who they are on the self-awareness side, if we're talking big picture, and do more life. Like I look at it too this way. This is the legacy, that I want to lead, and I want to help people transform to this, is understanding that life is short and life is long. Life is too short to do shit that you hate. Yes. And the sooner you can figure that out, and sooner you can get away from hating Sunday nights, because it means Monday morning means you're going to have to do something you don't like, and get away from looking forward to Friday, because that means you have 2 days away from what you don't like doing. But life is also really long. And so you have lots of opportunities to figure things out. And I've learned about myself, especially being a Scorpio, is that it's all about transformation. It's about death. It's about rebirth. And I see that in other people, and I can always see in other people what they could be doing and the power that they have. And my goal is to help as many people as I can transform into feeling joyful and successful in their life, not outside, but inside, doing what it is that they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, what a wonderful answer, because that's kind of essentially what I like to do as well, is to help people find what it is to drive them. What is the passion in life that, like you said, will drive you to get up every day, that doesn't even have to motivate you, because you're already driven from that point. I mean, it's an amazing feeling to have. I found this 4 months ago, and it's been what drives me every single day to get up and do this. So I know for me what it is that I found my passion, and what's going to push me forward into the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however long God sees fit to give me on this earth.
Yep.
Is to push and figure this out even to the next level. But like I said, I was very lost, like a lot of other people who, it's funny, I was just having this conversation with somebody else. People tell you, go find your drive, go find your passion, right? Yeah. Problem is with that is, if you don't know, but you still have the ambition to, it's very frustrating at times, because again, it's like getting in a car behind the wheel, not knowing where you're supposed to be going. They just tell you drive.
So get to the destination. So we know where the destination is. We're not going to tell you how to get there or where it is. Good luck.
Exactly right. And you're like, so it's frustrating. You're just driving around, going aimlessly, figuring it out until you find the path and go, well, this is it. This is the road. This is what leads me down to it every day. Now I know. It's a frustrating process, but it is amazing once you do find it. And it makes everything in your life, and it rotates around your life so much easier to try to figure out. You find out a lot of things about yourself, and you figure out a lot of courage of who you are as a person. So I love the fact that you answered it that way, because I want to do the same thing to help other people figure out their drives, because again, that's what drives me right now, is helping others help themselves. And I think that's what my purpose is now for the rest of my life, is to do that. And what capacity will that be? It's not always going to be the same. Yeah, exactly. Who knows? It's not always going to be the same. The message will be, though, to help other people find what drives them. And that helps me. So I love spending the time talking about that. So thank you so much, Jason. That was an awesome answer. And I tell everybody, there's no right or wrong answer. This is just about each individual and how everybody perceives what legacy is. And I think it's such an important question, because I think all of us think about it at some point in our lives. We go,
and I think the key is, and just one final thought on that, is also that there's no judgment. A lot of times it's, I've got to be saving the world, or I've got to be making a huge impact, or, I've got to be transforming lives. Your biggest and highest purpose on the planet could be entertaining, or throwing parties, or cooking in a restaurant, or raising a family, or, working at a store. Like, who knows how you're going to affect people and where you're supposed to be? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's a place for everybody. You just got to find that and not be judgmental. Be like, oh, well, I guess I'm not good enough because I'm not, Tony Robbins on stage changing lives. Like, no, it's not for everybody.
Exactly. Changing lives can be a simple, like you said, a simple thing like making a pie. Making a pie that somebody loves, they can't get nobody else.
Exactly. 100%.
I can't get this anywhere else. This guy makes an impact on my life because he cooks the best pie. I've never had anything like it before.
And people who host parties at their house, and they're the one who's entertaining, and they're making this lovely, party or environment people come to. Like, that's changing, that's affecting people, that's changing lives, that's transforming. And so there's literally no judgment in what it is that you're alive. Yep.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Jason, for taking the time out of your evening. Again, thank you everybody else who's come along, who's commented on the show, watching. You guys are the lifeblood of what I do. You make this the reason that I get up and have this conversation every day. So thank you again so much, everybody. Thank you, Jason, as well. You can go to his website at www.jasoncutter.com. You can find out about all his programs. You can find out about the
I know it's been a long hour.
Why is it slipping my mind? The
Authentic Persuasion.
Authentic Persuasion.
There you go.
Program that he has. So you can go to his courses. You can find that out as well, all through the Jason Cutter website, because that's the hub for a lot of his other websites as well. And of course, congratulations on coming up with the book. I always love to see other authors go out there and do their thing. I support writers, I support creatives, and that's what we do as a community. So thank you, everybody, as well, for coming on the show again. Tomorrow evening, I will be back at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. Tomorrow is an oddity for me. I have a free night where I don't have a guest, and I will just get to have a conversation with everybody else. Everybody will just talk to me. So thank you again. So yeah, I don't get these very often. So when I do, I kind of cherish them. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Jason. And just sit tight. I'll just have a few words with you. Everybody else, I will be back tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Thank you. Stay safe, stay blessed, and we'll get through this together. Bye-bye, everybody.